Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Heath. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Canadian Financial Summit session. We're talking today about dealing with divorce's impact on retirement planning. I have with me two people who work with people at different points of their divorces. Patricia tends to work with people more in the sort of pre-divorce and working through the divorce stage, assisting with financial and tax implications of division of assets and support. Jeff tends to work with people in the post-divorce phase, trying to come up with a new long-term financial plan. Patricia Greco brings over 30 years of experience as a chartered professional accountant, a CPA, and over 7 years as a chartered financial divorce specialist, a CFDS. She specializes in guiding individuals through the financial complexities of separation and divorce, offering strategic and cost-effective solutions. Her mission is actually deeply personal. It's shaped by her own experience with Ontario's court system, which inspired her to work with clients and provide financial divorce support. Jeff McCartney is an experienced certified financial planner, CFP, and he's got a background in investments, tax, and financial planning. He actually also holds the Chartered Financial Divorce Specialist, CFDS, designation. And amongst other clients, he works with clients going through divorce to develop a long-term plan. So, Patricia, I think maybe we'll get started with you. There's probably a lot of people who are not familiar with the CFDS, the Chartered Financial Divorce Specialist designation. Just wondering, how does your role differ from that of, say, a family lawyer, a divorce lawyer, or say, a general accountant?
Okay, Jason, thank you so much. So I'll start off, what is a CFDS? Because that is a lot of people aren't familiar with the designation. It stands for Chartered Financial Divorce Specialist. This is a Canadian designation for a financial professional. So they may already have a CPA, CA, or a CFP, or recognized financial designation. And this is someone who has completed additional training in the complex financial aspects of separation and divorce. The designation is granted by the Academy of Financial Divorce Specialists. My CPA, CA background, of course, provides a strong foundation in accounting, personal finance, tax, while the CFDS designation adds another specialized lens to these skills, specifically in the area of family law matters. So what does this include? Well, it includes understanding legal, financial frameworks associated with divorce, looking at long-term impacts of settlement options. I can also act as a neutral in a collaborative approach where I'm working with a mediator or a collaborative divorce family law professional, and helping both spouses understand their financial in situation and solutions that could be more equitable for them. That describes what the role is.
It sounds like it complements what a divorce lawyer would do.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't provide legal advice. I don't represent clients. But while a lawyer can help divide assets according to the law, my expertise is showing how that division will impact each person's financial life 10, 5, 20 years down the road. So I can illustrate different financial options available that a lawyer may not consider because they're more focused on the law.
Jeff, when someone comes out of a divorce, there's a lot of changes, obviously. What do you find is usually the most important financial step they should take?
Well, it's kind of a big picture approach in many ways, Jason. You've got to take stock, starting with your net worth. You'll wish to write down or get out your Excel spreadsheet, whatever you choose to do, and think about your bank accounts, your RSPs, your TFSAs, your property, and on the other side, your liabilities. your credit card debt, your lines of credit, mortgages, etc. Understanding that gives you a foundational view of what you own versus what you owe. And from there, you want to consider your spending. Given your sources of income and cash flow have likely changed, you'll want to make sure that you're not spending more than you can afford. This means you'll want to prioritize the essentials: housing, transportation, kids' education. But you want to do that followed by determining, are you continuing to save for retirement, for your future retirement? So I think having an active budget like this will allow you to get established with this change in your life. And I think by doing that, you'll be surprised at how quickly it becomes the new normal.
I think the one, I don't want to say good thing, the one good financial thing that comes out of divorce is you have to come up with a statement of assets and liabilities in order to be able to figure out division of assets. There's probably a lot of people who've never created a net worth statement, which is an important part of financial planning. And it really forces you to take a close look at your finances. And obviously, the financial impact coming out of divorce can be very difficult, but coming out of it with eyes wide open and being able to plan proactively is really helpful. Patricia, there's probably a lot of mistakes that you see people make when it comes to the divorce process. I'm just curious, what's the most common financial mistake when going through without professional financial guidance? Most people have legal guidance, but without professional financial guidance.
Yeah, fantastic. Very common question. One of the most common financial mistakes I see people make is making decisions based on emotion, right? Not necessarily financial reality. Divorce, as anyone can appreciate, is an intensely emotional time. People are dealing with so many emotions and are focused on what is fair for them. But what is fair for them, the other party may have a different view of what is fair. And so focusing on what is fair can exacerbate emotional turmoil, often leading to even more poor decision making, poor financial decision making, which can have long-term financial consequences. A few of them that I've seen, if I can give some examples, is thinking about wanting to cling to the family home. So the matrimonial home, is often the most single biggest assets that two people will have between the two of them. And that decision is a very emotional one. People want to keep it for the sake of the children. Maybe there's sentimental reasons. There's a sense of stability in maintaining the home. However, they may fail to do a realistic financial consideration. Can they actually afford to maintain the home on a single income going forward? So that's a mistake, that people not considering the full impact of some of the decisions that they're making. Another one is the decision to trade a liquid asset for an illiquid one. So for example, liquid asset, perhaps someone has large amount of retirement savings, large amount in an RSP, whereas that can be considered a liquid asset, whereas an illiquid one is the home, the matrimonial home, and they may want to trade one for the other because maybe on paper it looks like they have the same value, but what they're not thinking about is the future tax implications. So a retirement asset like a RSP has future tax implications associated with it. So 100,000 in an RSP is not worth 100,000 long term when you start to withdraw. So not thinking about the long term implications of the assets that are being traded. And also another mistake that I've seen is rushing to settlement. So understandably, people just want it to be over, right? They are emotionally, mentally exhausted, and they may want to come to a quick settlement, a quick agreement just to move on, perhaps without taking the time to actually gather all the necessary financial information and really consider the financial impact of the decisions they're making. This can lead to really costly mistakes.
It's tough, I think, during such an emotionally charged situation to think rationally at times, and whether it's a lawyer that can work with you in a very empathetic way, or a financial professional who can keep you focused on numbers and reality, as opposed to emotions and payback or coming out ahead. I think it's really important, the professionals that you choose to work with. And Jeff, as far as your perspective, you're also a chartered financial divorce specialist, but you see a lot of people on the other side who are dealing with the assets or potentially the liabilities that they're coming out of their divorce with. What are some of the mistakes you see, particularly as it relates to debt management post-divorce? I think, probably, again, with the price of real estate in a lot of big Canadian cities, debt management and who gets the mortgage and who gets what other debts has an impact. But what sort of mistakes that do you come across?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Patricia's already talked about. And I think continuing to try to hold on to assets that you can no longer afford due to debt level and the cost to service that debt, right? The payments and the interest. And also, therefore, because of that, leaving yourself short to contribute to other things like retirement accounts, right? Foregoing one to keep the other. It's not uncommon to come out of a divorce with what feels like an uncomfortable amount of debt. And a high level of debt is extremely stressful. So it's important to develop a plan for paying it off. And this is often can be a difficult time in the divorce process, one of many, where decisions about what, and this is to go back to Patricia, the decision has to be made on whether to keep the beloved asset, like a family home, are made. It's a very difficult decision to make, but understanding, and this is where, understanding your financial position, assets, liabilities, income, expenses, like we talked about just previously, understanding that can put you in a better position to understand how extensively your cash flow is impacted by debt and how this impacts your ability to do other things like saving for your RSPs, for example. So I think it's a combination. Not wanting to, you've got to take a good hard look at that debt level, those assets that you care about, and that feeling, that emotional feeling like I've got to keep this, versus sacrificing your future by maintaining that approach. And I think this is where planning can really have an impact, because again, coming back to my initial statement, it's an opportunity to let's take stock and really have a look at where you're at and what would be wise decision making, or what are the alternatives.
I think that's one of the best insights from engaging the financial planning process, projecting, taking assumptions today, projecting them out into the future, seeing how things look. And if it's a story that you don't like, the earlier you do that, the earlier there's an opportunity to rewrite that story. And what better time than when you're starting afresh and having to make a bunch of other changes to set yourself up for the long term. Patricia, when's the best time in the divorce process for someone to seek input from a financial professional, like a chartered financial divorce specialist? Should the first conversation be with a lawyer? Should it be later in the process, once you're getting down to, number crunching on division of assets and support?
CFDS can be hired at any point in time, but ideally, the ideal time to engage a CFDS is as early in the process as possible. So oftentimes, even before you've hired a lawyer, and here's why. So when I work with spouses, one or spouse or both spouses, I play an important role in the preparation of financial documents. So people would know this as the Form 13.1, for example. This is the mandatory sworn financial statement that's required by Ontario Family Court. I'm involved in preparing that. I am also can be involved in preparing the net family property statement, known as the NFP. This is the calculation that's used to determine the equalization payment, which is the amount that one spouse may have to pay the other spouse. So that is the calculation of that figure. So preparing these specific documents makes me not just a consultant, but makes me hands-on in preparing these important documents upfront and early in the process. There's other additional reasons why you would want to hire a CFDS early on. There's value in understanding your financial reality, as Jeff mentioned. Before making some important legal decisions and entering into negotiations with your spouse, it's really important to have that clear, unbiased picture of your financial situation, what's possible, what's going to be maybe difficult for you going forward. It can also guide you in your choice of a lawyer and the process that you may choose to follow. So when you're armed with a clear financial picture, you're better equipped to ask the lawyers the right questions. And you can understand and evaluate the lawyer's proposed strategy in working with you, whether that aligns with you and your financial goals. It also, the earlier, the better, because it also can significantly reduce your legal fees. So this is one of the most practical reasons that the CFDS is engaged early. Lawyers' fees can be higher, but by doing the heavy financial lifting, gathering the documents, preparing your financial statements, considering your budget, considering settlement options and scenarios, I can present these, you can present these to your lawyer. This allows the lawyer to focus on the legal strategy and negotiations, saving you from paying legal fees for tasks that a financial specialist can perform efficiently and likely at a lower cost.
That makes sense. I think it can and should be a multidisciplinary process, whether it's divorce, a lot of other things that happen in your financial life. I mean, there's legal implications, long-term financial implications, tax implications, investment implications. Jeff, I know that, we have identified that there can be a change in someone's investment goals or risk tolerance that comes as a result of divorce. And so how might a divorce change somebody's investment strategy?
Things have changed in a very meaningful way, right? Like you're in a different position now, and you have new financial goals, potentially a new time horizon, and perhaps an altered tolerance for risk. And with respect to, let's start with risk. How has your separation, divorce affected you and your thoughts about risk? It could go one of two ways. You may feel, well, you actually could go three ways. You could have no change potentially in your approach to risk, but you could feel potentially more risk averse because you're now on your own and you feel more cautious. There's more weight on your shoulders, and you don't worry that things could go wrong in the investment, in the capital markets, in your investment portfolio. On the other hand, you could feel more aggressive because you feel you might need to make up for lost time. So, your risk tolerance could differ by person to person, but one thing is for certain, there's a good chance it's different, or very much could be different than it was prior to your separation. Now, moving on to investment goals, you're going to have a different asset level than you did prior to your separation. You're also going to be evaluating things like time to retirement. which may have changed. In addition, you may have received or paid out a lump sum amount of money as part of an equalization payment process. So as a result of all of this, it's an important time to revisit your investment portfolio, rebalance it in a way that is most aligned with your new financial goals and objectives. And I think that's the key. It's a step, again, it's all part of the stepping back, taking stock process. You're just revisiting what you did, what you may have done previously with what is your new reality.
That makes sense. Again, good opportunity for a reset on your financial picture, whether it's significant or minor. There's things to consider. So Patricia and Jeff talked about an example of how a divorce can change somebody's investment goals and how there might be different situations to navigate. I'm curious, in your sort of pre-divorce planning capacity, are there a few examples of financial situations that you can share that you've helped clients navigate? What are some of the things that people have gone through in real life in their work with you?
I mean, a common one that spouses are facing right now, especially with the housing market, very common about spousal buyout, right? Can I buy out my spouse's share of the matrimonial home? As a very common financial matter that spouses are facing, and something that I help navigate. Once we have a view of the entire picture, we can then look at options. If their goal is to keep that home, is that going to be possible? How can that be possible? What assets could be transferred, negotiated, transferred between the spouses in order to make that happen? So that's something that we look at. Oftentimes, another example is considering spousal support, whether it be lump sum payment, or periodic monthly payment, as people often think about it. So a lump sum payment would be the value of that spousal support. And there's a present value calculation that's done that estimates what the value of all of the spousal support and the value of that today, and paying that out today. That's an important issue for people, particularly when we're looking at large equalization amounts between spouses. Sometimes, so if $100,000 is showing as an equalization between spouses, sometimes you don't necessarily have to transfer $100,000 in cash to your spouse, but we look at options, and maybe sometimes it's thinking about lump sum spousal support as an offset to that equalization. So these are a couple of examples of some common financial issues that I help couples navigate.
All helpful to know as you start to think about what's going to come next. I can see the benefit of having a lump sum spousal support paid instead of having to pay ongoing support or rely on receiving ongoing support. Something to do with just having that clear break. And I think, Jeff, it's important as well when it comes to joint accounts, beneficiary designations. There's other things that people may want to make sure they do in order to have a clean break and be able to move on. Are you able to speak a little bit about joint accounts and beneficiaries?
I think it's fairly straightforward, but and I'll put this into examples. I think that's the best way to put it. We'll start with joint accounts. Imagine if you leave your ex on a joint account, I don't know, like a credit card or a mortgage, and they fail to make payments. I mean, this could damage your credit score. In addition, any co-signed loans, you may end up being responsible for the payments as well. Now, just even if this is a resolvable issue via the divorce settlement, it may still end up being a huge thorn in your side, as you try to fix problems that are being created. Like I said, they could be fixable, But do you really want to have to go through the process of trying to fix them when it's a simple matter of just getting your names off of joint accounts into individual accounts and on your own, because you're on your own now, so you don't want to be joint any longer. And with respect to beneficiaries, it's almost the same thing. I'll use an example again. Consider your RRSP. If your ex is named on your RRSP, what happens when you pass away suddenly? You likely don't want your assets transferring to your ex. So as a result, it's really important to close these accounts and update those beneficiaries with the people who you want to receive your assets going forward. I think that's it. It's fairly straightforward. Make those changes.
Same thing carries over, I guess, to wills and powers of attorney. Like, it's all part of the new estate planning reality of being single, being divorced.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I can talk about that now, Jason. I think we were going to talk about it anyways, but why don't I go straight to that? With respect to wills and powers of attorney, it's similar to changing beneficiaries on the likes of RSPs and life insurance. Do you want your ex receiving the assets of your estate if you pass away? Are they going to look after you if you become sick and can't look after yourself? Or worse, or maybe not worse, but can or should you trust them to look after your finances? Right? So updating your will and power of attorney should be done so that they reflect your current wishes. Should something happen to you, consider who you want to receive your assets should you pass away, and who you want to help oversee your finances and health should you become incapable of doing it yourself. Now, just a quick thing of note, this applies to everyone, by the way, not just those who have gone through a separation and divorce. These are things that everyone should be thinking about.
Helpful context, and again, opportunity for a financial reset, and you almost need to go through the financial inventory, from investments to insurance to estate planning to you name it. So that's helpful. And Patricia, I want to make sure I'm articulating this properly. I think there's often this sense of what's fair and what's equitable when it comes to financial settlements, and I think there's a lot of perceived unfairness or inequality. If you asked one spouse and the other, they both probably think that things should work out differently in some cases. But if we're trying to distinguish between what's fair and what's equitable and what's reasonable, how do you help clients understand that distinction? I assume it's important.
Yeah, very important, because you're right. People think about, well, I just want what's fair. And so in the legal context, particularly in Ontario, where I do practice as a CPA, CA, and a CFDS, fair is often defined by the equalization of net family property in the legal context. The law essentially views the marriage as an economic partnership and is designed to divide the value of the wealth accumulated during the marriage on a 50-50 basis, right? We each get 50-50. And this formula is driven by that calculation I mentioned, the NFP. It gets to that 50-50 equalization, which would be considered, well, this is the fair way to go under the definition of the law. It's 50-50. What is equitable, on the other hand, is a settlement, because as you can appreciate, a lot of people may think, well, as 50-50 is not necessarily fair. And so they lean towards, well, what's equitable? And they want to negotiate based on what is equitable. And that's more than just about the numbers and how the numbers work out in the bottom line. It's about achieving an outcome that is not just, but what's reasonable, and importantly, what's sustainable for both parties in the long term, right? Keeping their family in mind, taking into consider each of their unique circumstances, an equitable settlement isn't necessarily perfectly 50-50. What I always do when I'm working with individuals, particularly when we're working from the start, is I help them understand what the law says, what it looks like in the eyes of the law, what is fair in the eyes of the law. So I walk them through what a net family property statement would be that is fair based on law. And then we lean towards what is equitable. So in that sense, what goals are we trying to achieve? And what could be some equitable financial outcomes that are possible that, again, are sustainable in the long run. So it's more than just dividing property today. It's looking at that settlement and what it could mean in the future and how that could be more equitable for both parties.
I think one of the biggest challenges in this day and age too is marriage has changed. It used to be people would get married when they were 18 years old and when they had nothing probably, and they would accumulate everything together. And I guess in the perfect world, if that's what happened and both spouses were the same age and had the same income, maybe you literally divide things 50-50. But now you've got people getting married much later in life, bringing different levels of assets or liabilities into marriages, gray divorce and getting married in even retirement in some cases, definitely makes things a lot more complicated. And speaking about or referring, Jeff, to retirement, divorce obviously has an impact on somebody's retirement timeline. What observations do you have about the impact on someone's ability to retire comfortably?
It's a huge unknown, right? Because you're going to be new to this approaching life as a single individual. But it's potentially safe to say that divorce could increase your timeline to retirement, or it could also require you to adjust your expectations for your current and retirement lifestyle, or potentially both. So, I mean, that can be, let's face it, that's stressful. But there is an opportunity here as well. It's a fresh start, and it gives you a tremendous opportunity, I think, to rethink your own financial wishes and goals going forward. So, you can ask yourself, what do you want to achieve in the short run? Would you like to focus on paying down debt? Perhaps take a much deserved vacation or focus on your children's education? What are your new long-term goals? When would you like to retire? When can you retire and still maintain the lifestyle that you'd like to achieve? So like I said, it's an unknown and there's going to be change, but it is a reset and it's a fresh start. So you can really revisit it with your own eyes, a fresh set of eyes. And I would call it taking ownership. Like you're in the driver's seat. So I think that's a useful term. You're in the driver's seat and can really, choose how the next number of years is going to go. So I think that's how I see it.
I think sometimes you see couples where one makes more of the financial decisions than the other. And sometimes, again, a divorce is an opportunity for someone who's never made these choices to step forward and set new goals, sometimes on purpose, sometimes because they have to, obviously.
Yeah, and there's a chance to improve, financial literacy and education too. Like you say, like previously, perhaps, for certain couples, one tends to probably do more thinking about the finance as well. This is an opportunity to make a change too. So that can be really positive as well.
Patricia, just one more sort of clarification on Chartered Financial Divorce Specialist and, the approach to divorce and maybe some of the costs that are involved with divorce. I mean, divorce can be expensive. And I think that in most cases, people want to keep the cost of their divorce low. In some cases, they get emotional and make decisions that lead to the cost being high. Working with a chartered financial divorce specialist, how can that save a client money in the long run? I mean, you're adding a new professional to the mix. I think there's probably people that worry that increases the cost, but how does it save a client money?
Definitely can save the client money, and I'll just illustrate by using some examples. Hiring a CFDS can help you save or help you avoid costly mistakes. So as an example, if you are looking at transferring assets as part of your settlement and not thinking about future tax consequences, that could be an extremely costly mistake for one party over the other. So as our example that we used earlier about trading one house, one party wants to keep the house and the other party perhaps wants to keep their retirement assets. Well, the value of the retirement assets has a tax implication associated with it. So, as I mentioned, a $100,000 retirement asset, whether it be a pension or RSP accounts, there's tax implications associated with that down the road. Whereas the spouse who's kept the house as part of their retirement, future retirement, when they go sell that house, well, we know in Canada there's no capital gains tax on your principal residence. So they have a tax-free asset. So not thinking thoroughly through some of these options available in your settlement can really be costly down the road. Streamlining the process as well, hiring the CFDS, focusing on preparing those financial statements can really significantly reduce the legal fees associated with your divorce process. So there's costs, of course, involved, but they're in the long run and over the course of your divorce process, hiring a CFDS can really help you lower your overall costs.
I'm guessing not every divorce is well suited for collaboration, but to the extent somebody can work with a chartered financial divorce specialist, to the extent they can work with a mediator or a collaborative lawyer who's going to keep things fairly straightforward, better likelihood you're not going to be writing letters back and forth and arguing over petty things. It really is can be an expensive process if you take the wrong approach. Jeff, working with a financial planner, there's probably a lot of people who have worked with, quote unquote, financial planners who, manage their investments. I think a lot of people sort of think those two terms or concepts are synonymous. Financial planner is my investment person, right? But a professional financial planner that can, focus on long-term financial goals. I mean, it's a very different approach than just trying to pick, what stocks to buy, right? So how can working with a financial planner and taking a professional financial planning approach help rebuild someone's financial future?
The fee-only planner there's no focus on investment dollars only, right? That's not the key focus. The key focus is on financial planning and big picture financial planning, focusing on the individual and their needs. And that financial planning process is no different for a single person who's gone through a divorce than it is for a couple. So A, B, or C. A fee-only planner has no hidden agenda, no goal to sell you any kind of product or any kind of solution. The fee-only planner's only goal is to help you work through your financial wish list and guide you through all the processes that we've kind of discussed over the last half an hour, looking at your retirement goals and needs and how you're going to get there and what's your assets, liabilities, income and expenses, and how are you going to save for that future and what costs do you need to cut potentially, but really focus in how you're going to pay off your debts. We haven't talked today about setting yourself up for insurance, maybe rethinking that. But as a fee-only planner, we're going to touch on all those things as they impact your life or could impact your life. So a good planner, and let's come back, also add in education into this as well. A good fee-only planner will help you gain financial knowledge. And that can empower you to rebuild your new financial life in a way that gives you confidence. And although it may not be easy, but it'll give you the confidence that you're going to be just fine. And I think as a fee-only planner, we can help with that. We can help to build our clients' financial knowledge.
I think there's something to be said about knowing the path that you're on, even if it's not necessarily the way you would like it to look. It may be a harder path than it was pre-divorce, but the sooner you know, the sooner you can take steps to, be what you want to be and go where you want to go. So that's helpful advice.
It almost is in any aspect of planning. The unknown is incredibly stressful.
Mm-hmm. Scary. Yeah.
It's scary. And I have found throughout my career as a planner in general that once people have a plan, even if the news isn't always good, knowledge is power. So once you know, then you know, and you can start addressing. You can start addressing it. But when you don't know, or you think you know and you know it's probably not good, that just weighs down on you. So the sooner you tackle these things with a plan and meet with a planner and start working through them, I think the stress starts going away. Again, even if the news isn't, even if you're working from a different financial position than you had been previously.
Patricia, I'm going to give you the final say or the final comment, so to speak here. And, I'm just curious if there's one piece of advice or a takeaway that you'd want someone who's just starting to think about divorce, what's one piece of advice regarding the financial aspects of divorce that people should be thinking about?
The single, I think, most important piece of advice I could give someone who's just starting the divorce, thinking about divorce or just starting the divorce process is shifting their mindset. So a shift from what is fair, going back to that fair word, a shift from what is fair, I just want what's fair, to thinking about what are the possibilities? I wonder what the possibilities could be. So the latter mindset is really leaning into that opportunity of what is possible. And by doing that, you're opening the door to things that you may not have thought about, that perhaps is better than what you thought would be fair. Perhaps what is possible is going to serve you best in the long run. So having that foundation of what is possible versus what I just want what's fair can help you save time. It can help you save money in your divorce process, and it could really help with the emotional distress, because just being focused on what is fair can cause a lot of more emotional turmoil, as opposed to just being open to just let's explore what's possible. So, and I would also suggest that people don't make haste decisions. So going out and selling the matrimonial home right away, perhaps maybe that's not the best decision. Just to take a step back and make sure you have an overall picture of the financial situation before you make any major decisions.
That's good advice. I think even in as it relates to communication in a divorce, before you send that text or before you send that email, maybe let it sit in your drafts for 24 hours or something like that. Don't come from a place of emotion. And I think that there's professionals out there that can help you walk through these things and make sure you're coming at divorce from a place of knowledge rather than a place of reactivity. So I want to thank you, Patricia and Jeff, for chatting today. about dealing with divorce's impact on financial planning and retirement planning. I think, really important, useful information. We're going to put up some information about Patricia and Jeff in a minute for those who stick around and who are interested and have any questions. Feel free to reach out to Patricia and Jeff. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. And Patricia and Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.